Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Friends, before I start the discussion of the sutta for today, I have a question, that somebody asked me about the last discussion that we had, and I thought I'll answer it now because it might be useful to the others too. This is about the simile of the tortoise. Now, the person who asked me to explain the real meaning of that simile. So I thought I will do that now. Now, you remember, I suppose, that we talked about the tortoise having the 4 limbs, the neck and the head. Those are the parts of the body that are outside the shell. So, when the tortoise pulls in its limbs, 4 limbs, that is the 4 legs, and the neck and head into its shell, it will be safe from the jackal, because the jackal is coming behind the tortoise to catch it. So it will be safe. But if it has patience, then the jackal cannot touch it. So the jackal also waits to somewhere nearby, waiting for the tortoise to put out at least 1 or 2 of the limbs. But if the tortoise comes out quickly, thinking the jackal, being frustrated by waiting, has gone away, the jackal may grab it because it's waiting. But the 4 limbs and the neck and head form only 5 of the senses. You remember, we have 6 senses, including the mind. So the tortoise also has 6 senses. So we can suppose that the 6th sense is the mind of the tortoise. And if the mind has wrong view, the tortoise will come to harm. But if it has right view, the tortoise will not come out quickly, so that it will be safe. The analogy is true for all sensual distractions. For example, anger, pride, envy, lust, all defilements, right? When provoked in any situation, rather than react, we could rest within, go inside instead of coming out. Pull the senses in, and no bad karma will result. Now that is the idea behind the Buddha saying, take the senses inside. Like the tortoise who pulls in the limbs, the head, the neck, the limbs, everything pulls inside the shell. Then it is safe. In the same way, we human beings too can be safe from, the defilements that we have, if we are able to pull inside instead of going out. So now that is the answer to the question. So now we'll come to the sutta that we have planned for today. Actually, though I could not finish the sutta the last time, I did only half of it. I thought that I may not do the other half till, I do another few more suttas. So now today I have chosen for discussion the Dvedha vitakka Sutta, two kinds of thought from the Majjhima Nikaya. This is an interesting sutta, for here the Buddha tells the monks about his own experience in training and how he attained awakening or enlightenment. That's why I chose this sutta, because it will be interesting as well as useful for those who want to go in this way. This sutta is especially useful to all meditators, for sometimes we think it's boring to just keep watching the breath. From the way that the Bodhisattva handled the breath, we can learn how we could make it an interesting experience. Because you see, the Bodhisattva used the breath for awakening. Isn't that marvelous? As a Bodhisattva, he too had to struggle with unwholesome thoughts. Can you see? Even the Bodhisattva had unwholesome thoughts. So we need not be ashamed of the unwholesome thoughts that we have, and had to find ways of abandoning them. His method was to divide those thoughts into two classes. The thoughts of sensual desire, ill will, and harming or cruelty into one side. The thoughts of renunciation, non-ill will, and non-harming on the other. Before enlightenment, the Bodhisattva too is shown as an ordinary person, but one who was vigilant. Now these are the qualities that he had as a Bodhisattva: vigilant, watchful, and alert. Now these words are given in Pali as appamattassa. You know, appamatta, you know the meaning, isn't that so? That means vigilant, watchful, and alert. Energetic or ardent. So he had a lot of energy. Atapi is the Pali word. Resolute. Pahitatta. So these are the qualities of the Bodhisattva's mind. Even at this early stage, the Bodhisattva had the first two factors of the Noble Eightfold Path. That is, right view and right intention. Right intention is given as Samma Sankappa in Pali. Showed him the right direction that the mind should take in order to understand right view. That is Sammaditi. So to understand right view, he had to have right intention. So see these things for ourselves. The first negative thought that arose in him was one of sensual desire. This is understandable, for his early life was entirely sensuous and luxurious. At this point of time, the Bodhisattva was wise enough to see and understand the acute suffering that would be caused to both body and mind if he let this sensuous thought to proliferate or increase, not only to himself but also to others. It would be a problem. So he abandoned it and continued to meditate. Can you see? When we get a bad thought, good to abandon it. Think about it as something that we should not have. Then a thought of ill will arose in his mind. Now that is the next negative thought. He used the method of labeling it once he identified it. Now when we also get a bad thought, we can label it. This is anger, this is pride, this is conceit, like that, right? This recognition of the negative thought helped him to transform it by meditating on the distress and undesirable consequences that would result to both himself and others, and then abandon it. That is the thought of ill will. Because the Bodhisattva had the first two factors of the Noble Eightfold Path, at this juncture, he realizes that whatever one keeps thinking about will influence the mind, and all thoughts would slant and tilt towards that kind of thinking. Now, if we have a bad thought of envy or selfishness or stinginess, all the other thoughts that come after that will, go towards that. Increase that whatever bad thought that we had. Because the Bodhisattva, that is, if one frequently thinks about sensual desire, then all thoughts of renunciation would be abandoned. And if one frequently has thoughts of harming or cruelty and ill will, all thoughts of non-harming, etc., will be abandoned. So, says the Bodhisattva, I too saw the danger, degradation, and defilement in unwholesome thoughts, and the blessing and cleansing aspect in wholesome thoughts of renunciation. Here, renunciation does not mean going away from home and becoming a recluse. It means giving up unwholesome thoughts. The danger he saw was that when one gets bound by negative thoughts, one carries them over into one's life and even to another rebirth, because they become habits and affects one's personality, so that these tendencies continue from life to life. What we are now is an accumulation of all thoughts from the beginning of existence. Instead of harboring and nurturing these bad habits, when the opportunity arises, it's important that they are seen and abandoned. If we don't see them, we cannot do anything about it. We'll just do what the mind tells us. Sometimes this act of recognition is not enough to overcome the negativity. Direct meditation on the impurities of the body, the danger, disadvantages, misery, and how they lead to affliction should be recognized. Degradation means the Bodhisattva saw that the negative thoughts of sensual desire, ill will, and harming pollutes and demoralizes the mind. As the mind is the forerunner of all thoughts, speech and actions, the cleansing of the mind was the first task of the Bodhisattva. Later, as the Buddha, when he became the Buddha, he advises the monks, Sabba papassa akaranang, kusalasta upasampada, sachitta pariyodapanang, etang buddhana sasanang. Not to do any evil, to develop the good, to purify the mind. This is the teaching of the Buddhas. By reflecting again and again, the Bodhisattva built a force against these defilements. Now all this is, mind you, not physical. It's all mental. This was not a physical force, but one of wisdom. By developing the opposite kind of thought, he saw that there was less suffering and both mind and body became tranquil and calm. A deep positive energy, it's called Samma Virya, was built up from within to overcome the defilements. This means right effort. Now that is another factor of the Noble Eightfold Path. We say that the Buddha is Samma Sambuddha because he strived individually, in isolation, to discover the Four Noble Truths, replacing the unwholesome roots with the wholesome, that is, sensual desire with renunciation, ill will with loving kindness, and harming with non-cruelty. The Bodhisattva was able to steady the mind internally, quieten it, bring it to one-pointedness, to gather all forces together and unify the mind. He says, with excessive thinking and pondering, he could tire the body. And when the body is tired, the mind gets strained. And when the mind is strained, it hinders concentration. So, he kept the mind calm and tranquil. You would have experienced this, what the Buddha is saying, what the Bodhisattva is saying at that point, you would have experienced many, many times in life. With his tranquil mind, the Bodhisattva attained the first jhana. Now the jhana has formulas. Now this is the formula for the first jhana. Quite secluded from sensual pleasures, secluded from unwholesome states, I entered upon and abided in the first jhana, which is accompanied by applied and sustained thought with rapture and pleasure born of seclusion. So this is what the Bodhisattva says. Here, seclusion plays a very important role in the attainment of jhana. The Bodhisattva had both mental seclusion as well as physical seclusion, for he was totally isolated under the Bodhi tree. Secluded from sensual pleasures and unwholesome states means his mind was rid of hindrances. I hope you remember the hindrances, but I will, say them again. That is sensual desire, kama chanda in Pali, ill will, vyapada in Pali, sloth and torpor, tina midda in Pali, restlessness, uddacha kukkucha in Pali, and doubt, vichikicha. So he had got rid of these, at least for the time being, suspended them, or he would have totally abandoned them, these hindrances, because that is with the first jhana, you have to have the hindrances away. So at this stage, applied thought is also known as initial application. It is called vitakka in Pali. Now that is one of the other factors that is in the jhana. Now he has got rid of the hindrances. He has some other factors that come into the mind with the first jhana. The first thing is vitakka. Vitakka is the initial application. That is, the object of the Bodhisattva was the breath. So the initial application means he thought about the breath. Then, with the 4 kinds of effort. Now, I'll tell you what the 4 kinds of effort are. That is, to prevent unarisen evil thoughts, to prevent them. Then, abandon already arisen evil thoughts. If one has any evil thoughts, to abandon them. Then the third thing is to develop wholesome, good thoughts that have not yet come, not yet arisen. And the fourth thing is to maintain whatever good thoughts that are already there, to, develop them and maintain them and, to protect them. So these are the 4 efforts. Now, with all this effort, all unwholesome thoughts have ceased without remainder. There you are. All unwholesome thoughts have gone without remainder. Now, there is nothing, no unwholesome thoughts in his mind. With none greed, none hatred, and none delusion, applied thought has become wholesome, and instead of unwholesome reflections, thoughts of renunciation, benevolence, that is generosity, harmlessness, led to the growth of wisdom. So now he has abandoned whatever is not necessary and cultivated what is good. The Bodhisattva was able to develop the noble eightfold path at this moment, right? At a mundane level, not the supramundane level. When the practice was fully mature, the supramundane noble eightfold path arose in his mind. Now the next factor that was in the first jhana, now we talked about the initial application. That is the first thing. That is called vitakka in Pali. The next one is the sustained thought, that is keeping the thought there. That came after the initial application is called vichara. It is called vichara. Vitakka, vichara. As the word suggests, sustained application keeps the mind fixed on the object. Now his mind will not waver, will not go away from the object. This object, the breath, is examined and inspected at this stage. In his mind, he is inspecting this object, the breath. These two states are compared. Now, there is a simile to the striking of a bell and then the ringing sound that follows. Now, when you ring the bell, there is the ringing and the sound later. So, the vitakka is the ringing of the bell, and the sound that comes later is the vichara. Another comparison is when we draw a circle with the compass, the pin at the center is like the vitakka. That's the first initial application or the initial application. And vichara or sustained application is like the one that moves around, completing the circle. These two, vitakka and vichara, are indispensable for the achievement of the first jhana. Now, there is another third factor in the jhana, first jhana. That is called rapture or piti. The happiness in jhana is spiritual and born of seclusion from the hindrances. Now, because the hindrances are not there, there is a lot of happiness in the mind. This happiness suffuses the whole mind and body. And the term pinayati is used. The fourth factor that is in this first jhana is known as pleasure or sukha, also somanasa in Pali, is closely associated with rapture. As this is a feeling, it is a feeling, you know. Pleasure is a feeling. It creates an interest in the object. Now the mind is very interested in the object, the breath. This means that the mind is totally immersed in that one object, the breath, so that he is in samadhi or concentration. Now this concentration, don't mistake, is not a very, very deep concentration, but samadhi. When the first jhana is well established, the Bodhisattva felt that the first two factors, that is the initial and the sustained application, were rather gross and an obstacle to strengthen the other factors. So, because they still generate thought. You see, now with those two factors, initial and sustained application, still he gets thoughts in the mind. So he thought, this is too gross, and abandoned them in order to develop the second jhana. This is the formula for the second jhana. The second jhana is like this. With the stilling of applied and sustained thought, I entered upon and abided in the second jhana, which has self-confidence and singleness of mind, without applied and sustained thought, with rapture and pleasure born of concentration. Now that is the formula for the second jhana. The second jhana is more tranquil and peaceful than the first. As the thoughts are stilled, he gains self-confidence internally, and the mind is totally silenced because there is no internal vocal activity or verbalization. Now you yourself would have found very often when we sit down to meditate, sometimes some thought comes, but with the thought there is word. There is word and also even a picture sometimes. So all that has stopped now. when the Bodhisattva attains the second jhana, he gets faith in the Dhamma and sees the effectiveness of the practice, and as a result gains tranquility. Though there was a certain amount of unification of the mind in the first jhana, by the actual inner confidence, one-pointedness becomes stronger and more stable at the second jhana. So now there is one-pointedness of mind. This jhana is called noble silence. It is said that the rapture and happiness of this jhana is born of concentration, unlike the first jhana, where rapture and happiness were due to seclusion. So you can see the difference. The first jhana due to seclusion, the second jhana due to concentration. The Bodhisattva experienced real samadhi or deep concentration. Now the Bodhisattva felt that any mental excitement found in rapture was too gross and cultivated an attitude of indifference towards it. He saw that sukha, happiness, and one-pointedness, that is called ekaggata, were more peaceful and sublime. So, concentrating on the breath, he abandoned the second jhana and attained the third jhana. This is the formula for the third jhana. With the fading away as well of rapture, I abided in equanimity and mindful and fully aware, still feeling pleasure with the body. I entered upon and abided in the third jhana, on account of which noble ones announce, he has a pleasant abiding who has equanimity and is mindful. Here he saw, other than the jhana factors, equanimity, mindfulness, and clear comprehension in his mind. The equanimity he developed was impartial. Now look at that. Impartial towards all beings. Same for all. No, one is not more than the other or lower than the other. And attachment towards the pleasant as well as aversion towards the unpleasant were both gone from his mind. This was the balanced frame of mind that was leading towards liberation. This was the wisdom that saw all things with a detached indifference. Fully mindful of both positive and negative states of mind, he was able to remain with the positive states. The word body, you remember in the formula there was the word pleasure with the body. Now this body is not the physical body. Here means happiness with the mental body. That is the factors associated with consciousness like feeling, perception, volition, one-pointedness, and attention. Now, so don't mistake it to think that it was pleasure with the body. But the mental happiness overflows to the physical. That happens even to us, isn't that so? And the Bodhisattva felt bodily pleasure even after emerging from the jhana. Here, the Bodhisattva abandons the gross factor of happiness. That is, the felt pleasure and happiness born of mind contact and enters the fourth jhana. So you can see at each step he abandons some factors and gains other factors. Now he has come to the fourth jhana. Now this is the formula. With the abandoning of pleasure and pain, and with the previous disappearance of joy and grief, I entered upon and abided in the fourth jhana, which has neither pain nor pleasure, and purity of mindfulness due to equanimity. Now you can see the earlier it was seclusion, then it was concentration, now it is equanimity. Here pleasure means bodily happiness, the felt pleasure born of mind and body contact. Pain here means unpleasant feeling, both physical and mental. I'll read out the formula, these parts again. With the abandoning of pleasure and pain, with the previous disappearance of joy and grief, I entered upon and abided in the fourth jhana, which has neither pain nor pleasure, and purity of mindfulness due to equanimity. So we are now going through that, the different sections, right? So he felt joy is the mental pleasure, felt happiness born of mind contact. Grief is the opposite of joy, mental unpleasant feeling. Now all those things are gone. Though this formula seems to suggest that all four feelings disappear at the attainment of the fourth jhana, the Buddha says that dukkha, the faculty of pain, ceases without remainder at the attainment of the first jhana. So when he attains the first jhana, he has abandoned dukkha. The faculty of grief at the second jhana. With the second jhana, grief has gone. The faculty of pleasure at the third jhana. Now, third jhana, pleasure is gone. And the faculty of joy at the fourth jhana. That is how, with these jhanas, each one becomes more and more purer and purer. The fourth jhana has two factors. That is, neither painful nor pleasant feeling, and one-pointedness of mind, and a new element, purity of mindfulness due to equanimity. This jhana has mental equanimity without pleasure or pain, and an impartial attitude without attachment and aversion. This is completely pure, like a white cloth covering the whole body. With a mind rid of all imperfections, the Bodhisattva, now still he is not the Buddha, right? The Bodhisattva now turned his mind to the reflection of his past life and saw many eons of world expansion and contractions, which he terms was the first true knowledge gained after banishing ignorance. So when ignorance had gone, the first true knowledge was seeing his past life. It was not one or two or hundreds, but millions of lives. So now the Bodhisattva directed his mind to the knowledge of the past lives of other beings and saw how they fared according to their karma. This was the second true knowledge. Now he directed his mind to the destruction of the taints Now, what are the taints? They are also called asava. There are 4 taints, namely the taint of sense desire, kamasava, desire for eternal existence, bhavasava, wrong views, ditthasava, and ignorance, avijjasava. These are the 4 taints. He directly knew suffering. Now, with the abandoning of all these, now he sees the 4 noble truths. Suffering, the cause of suffering, the cessation of suffering, and the way leading to the cessation of suffering. The Buddha directly knew birth is destroyed. The holy life has been lived. What had to be done has been done. There is no more coming to any state of being. The Buddha, now, that was his experience. The Buddha has done everything as a teacher could do out of compassion for his disciples. He advises us not to delay and later be regretful, but meditate and find the path that he found and also gain liberation like himself. That is the Dvedha Vitakka Sutta. Any questions? No question? Then, would you like to do a little meditation?
That will be fine. Yeah.
Yes. Yes, Pushpa?
Yes, that would be fine if we don't have, if nobody
Okay,
has.
okay. You want to do the meditation, right? So today I thought we will do the meditation of looking at this body. That is also called scanning the body. So, sit properly. Take a few deep breaths. Close your eyes. Now focus your mind on the top of your head and see what sensations you feel at the top of your head. Maybe the air touching the head. It may be cool, it may be warm, depending on the atmosphere. Go to the sides of your head. Now go to the back of your head. It might be the same kind of sensation, or there might be some irritation somewhere or a pain somewhere, but don't focus on that. Just look at it as it is. Now come to the forehead. Now you will find the eyes are closed, the lids closed. You feel the eyeballs inside, but you don't see anything. Come down to the cheeks. Again, you feel the air on the cheeks. And then you come to the nose, where actually the air goes in and out. Feel the sensations there. Now come to the lips. Your lips are closed. You feel the saliva in the mouth. Now go down to the chin. It's parallel with the floor. Now you go to the neck. You might feel the clothes, whatever you're wearing, depending on it, the way it is. Any sensations that you feel, just look at it, that's all. Don't think this is good or that is bad, but just look at the sensations you feel. Go to the shoulders. You will feel the two arms hanging on either side. There is a certain heaviness about it. The arms are bent at the elbows, and you may be holding one hand, the fingers, the hand with the other. Now come back to the neck and see the chest. It's rising and falling according to the air that goes in and out. Now go to the back. See your spine straight, holding the neck and the head. Now go further down the buttocks. You may be seated on a chair, on a cushion, on the floor. All these are elements. The buttocks are also elements. So the hardness that you feel or the softness that you feel is due to the elements. Come to the front and see the abdomen. That's also rising and falling. The air that goes in and out makes it rise and fall. Are you doing it? No, it's happening. So that is why this is not ours. It's just made up of these elements. We don't own this body. Now come to the thighs. See how they are joined with the body and how they cross at the knees if you are seated that way. Then the ankles and the feet, the toes. Okay. Now look at your whole body in outline. This body is made up of the 4 elements. The harder, softer parts belong to the earth element. The watery part, like the blood, saliva, urine, tears, belong to the water element. Then there is the heat element, that is the warmth in the body. And the air element, that is all outside, which we take in and throw out also. That is what gives lightness to the body to move about. Give a balance to the body so that we can keep it straight or seated or lying down, whatever we think is possible. So if you have any questions to ask, please do.